and thank you for joining us today. We'll meet the 3 finalists for Police Chief of Cedar Falls. Candidates were solicited nationwide in February, and of the 5 applicants, these 3 met the listed requirements in the solicitation. The 3 finalists are now meeting for conversations with civic leaders, surrounding law enforcement leaders, community stakeholder groups, and senior city managers. After taking in feedback from each of these groups about the candidates, I'll send to the City Council a nomination for one of these finalists. The City Council will then consider approving my nomination in the weeks ahead, and we will continue to keep the community updated about the process. The COVID-19 pandemic has made this process a little more complex. I would have preferred to host an informal meet and greet session in the council chambers for you to connect with each of the finalists, but to avoid the spread of coronavirus, I'm instead recording this video series for you. I've invited the public to send in questions to me to ask each finalist on your behalf, and I'll ask these questions now. We're here with Captain Mark Howard today. I have a few questions for you, Captain Howard. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
First question I'll start off with is, how has your past experience helped prepare you for this position?
Well, my past experience goes back quite a few years. I actually started in management right after college when I moved to North Carolina. Well, I was actually in the Guard. I was a sergeant in the Guard. I actually, after my first 6 years, got out of the Guard, went to North Carolina, got into the textile industry, and was a department manager for a large company down in North Carolina. After coming back to Iowa, my goal was to be a police officer all along. I got frustrated with manufacturing. My wife did not want me to be a cop in Charlotte, so we moved back to Iowa. I got right back in the Guard as an E5, and then joined law enforcement. I started in Waverly. Even from the beginning of my career in law enforcement, I was a leader. I was an FTO after my first year with Waverly, a field training officer, and that continued on. And then special assignments I had through Waverly. As I came to Cedar Falls in 2007, kind of the same options. Right within my first year, I became a field training officer for the department, moved into investigations after getting the Officer of the Year award in 2008, and was a lead investigator for numerous investigations from 2009 to 2012 when I was promoted to lieutenant. And then worked all 3 shifts as a lieutenant for the department. Went to training as a training lieutenant where I was promoted to captain in 2017. From there, I've been the first shift commander and currently now the third shift commander as a captain. So just those experiences have all led me to, really where I'm at, and it's drove me to continue my education. Not only do I have a bachelor's degree in in political science, I went back and got my master's degree in public policy with my focus in criminal justice and city government. With the intentions of this is where I wanted to be. I wanted to have this opportunity, to lead our police department. So.
Okay, thank you. This question was suggested by TJ Frine. How would you seek to strengthen police and community engagement in Cedar Falls?
Well, I think, and this is not a criticism, but I think we need to work on our communication campaign as a department. I know we can't do much right now with COVID the way it is, but we need to open ourselves up when that's available. Let people see what we are. People see that we're still a functioning police department. We are still a very effective law enforcement agency, along with a fire agency. And there's a lot of miscommunication out there about the program we have going on. I think we need to open that up. Let people see who we are. We need to communicate it. And I don't think it should always be Director Olson doing that. We have several faces that can go before a camera, go before a committee, reach out to our neighborhood associations, reach out to our business associations, make ourselves present in all these places that we can, make ourselves available and really communicate who we are. That's how we build that relationship. I can tell you as a third shift commander, I have spent the last 2.5 years building relationships, not only with other law enforcement agencies, but also with the community. Our bar owners, after we started having a lot of problems in our bar districts, I reached out to our bar owners. I had a meeting, myself, Ron Gaines, and Director Olson had a meeting with the College Hill Partnership back in February 2019, where we had a shooting where 2 people were shot up there over on New Year's Eve that year. We reached out to them. We had probably 40 plus people show up. Great meeting. We made some guarantees to them, lighting, cameras, and several of the bar owners reached out to me. Mark, we've got to get a loitering ordinance. These are them asking us for a loitering ordinance, not us. Captain Herenstein and I in November wrote that ordinance, and I believe it's got one more reading yet before it becomes an ordinance for the council. So and the lighting, if you haven't seen it, I encourage people to get up there in the evenings, drive around the College Hill, see how much CFU has done. That whole Olive Street area, really lit up nice now, which really helps us while we're patrolling. And then the cameras up there are phenomenal. The city has done an incredible job giving us some incredible technology, both on the Hill and downtown Main Street. So I think that's, really what community is about, is partnerships. So.
Okay, thank you. Next question comes from Kelly Stern, our library director. She asks, what's a significant challenge facing our community, and how will you use your influence as police chief to help facilitate solutions?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges we have, we're continually growing. And it's not always about population, but space, buildings, neighborhoods, which means more patrol area, more areas for us to be concerned about, especially, working the late hours where we're constantly watching these businesses, driving through these neighborhoods. So that's one of our concerns, is that the rapid growth, we have to make sure we keep up with that. I believe the new public safety building's a start because of its location. And then also the whole public safety model that was requested for us to do. I think that's a concern. We hear that a lot. We know that's a lot in the news. I know you talk about it in your council meetings. But the way I look at it is that's the political body that brought that to us. And everybody, I can tell you, we have great men and women down there that are doing everything they can to make that happen. And we need to make sure we're communicating that, continue working to show that this could be an effective program for this community. I think as an officer, I can tell you, we don't like being political. I've always said a chief of police should never be politically active. He or she should be politically aware, politically awake. But our job is to be representative of what the political body puts to us. The agenda that they set, it's our job to work very hard, very efficient, and make it as effective as a program as we can. And that's, I think, what we're trying to do. And what we have to do is continue to communicate that, as I already said, to our public, to show them that we have incredible people working for the Public Safety Department. Incredible people. They make us, people at the top, look good because of their efforts and how hard they work. And we just need to show that.
Okay. This position requires an understanding of goal setting and strategic planning. How would you incorporate strategic planning into your decision-making process as the police chief?
Well, I think everything we do for every year, we should be planning ahead. We get the agenda, again, from our, I'll get it from the public safety director. Our model's a little different than a lot of other cities. But then those objectives, we have to set goals for so we reach those goals. It's like when they came to me, Mayor, about the public safety department. I wasn't for it at first. I was absolutely against it. Matter of fact, one of my famous quotes that I get reminded of all the time is that, why would you wrap a dog in cat's fur? But once I was allowed to go on a couple different site visitations, and then was giving the objectives of the program. One, put more cops on the street. Well, when I hear that, I'm like, okay, now you got my attention. Get more firefighters to a fire scene, and then save money. And when I hear that, so those are objectives. So now we need to set goals every year, strategic goals of how we reach those elements, so we can show the public what we're doing is in their best interest. Nothing I plan to ever do as a police chief would be outside of the public's interest. I'm a police officer. I intend to be in charge of police officers, and everything that we do will be for the public and for the betterment of the public.
Okay, thank you. This question came from Truman Stone. In our professional lives, we've all experienced mistakes and failures. Can you give an example of a professional mistake or failure and what you learned from that experience?
Yeah, I shared this yesterday in an interview with some of our community leaders. I have always, one of the things I do all the time is I go to supervisory courses. I go to the LEADA courses. I receive my trilogy. It's hard to explain what that is, but really it's an FBI group that's taught. They teach a leadership, a command level, and an executive level course. They're a week long each. Once you've successfully passed all three of those, you get what's called a trilogy award. And I received mine in 2019. Well, one of the things I learned at the executive session, it was actually by Dr. Tony Batts, who was the chief of police in Baltimore when Freddie Gray died. One of the things he talked about was, if you don't get out in front of the media and you don't talk to the media when a major event happens, they're going to fill that void. So if you don't write the narrative, they're going to fill that narrative for you. And I learned that the hard way when we had our early New Year's Eve morning, 2019, when we had the shooting I spoke about on the Hill. I was the commander of the scene. I'd been out on that scene. I'm going to make an excuse here, but I was out on that scene all night, and I was really cold. And about 5 a.m, we're clearing that scene. One of my lieutenants and I and a few of the other officers that were there, and we're wrapping it up, getting our tape down. I saw one of the news agencies show up. I saw him set up, and I knew it was my responsibility to walk over to him and give a press release. And I was cold, I was hungry, and my strong addiction to coffee was killing me. And I convinced myself, I'm going to go back to the PD and I'm going to write a press release quick and get it off. Well, by the time I got to the PD and all the admin work we did, and later that, it was probably late that morning before I ever even kicked the press release out. He had done just that. He had put out a press release stating that incident occurred in one of our bars. And of course it didn't. It occurred out in the street, had nothing to do with that establishment. And when we had our meeting in February with the bar owners, with the College Hill Partnership people, that bar owner was furious, and rightfully so. And I stood in front of every one of them people and I said, that was my fault. I saw him. I didn't take the steps all I needed to do was walk over to him and tell him exactly what happened, give him the press release in verbal form. And none of that would have occurred. So that was a hard lesson for me to learn. That was on me. And I took the time to make sure that bar owner knew that. And his complaint was valid. He had parents from UNI calling him saying, hey, my kid frequents your establishment. How does this happen in your establishment? Well, it didn't. It happened out on our streets, the streets that I'm responsible for. And I missed it. I should have gave that statement to the reporter that morning. So.
Okay. Also from T.J. Frine, he asks, how have you utilized the expertise of subordinates in areas where you're not an expert?
Well, I'll tell you, a good leader always puts people around him that know more than he does, or she does, excuse me. And I believe that to the core. I have 2 lieutenants who are incredible that work for me. It wasn't that long ago, we had a subject in a house with a rifle threatening his family. He was also threatening himself. It was not a situation, it was almost an active shooter situation where we had to enter. Well, one of my lieutenants is the MERT commander, the major incident, our SWAT commander. Well, in no way was I going to take command of that scene when I have that expert. So that subordinate, my lieutenant, I said, your scene, your call, what do you need? So he became our incident commander. He made the call. We went in that house. Fortunately, the only person that was hurt was the person with the gun due to his own doing. But that's how you have to use those experts around you. Some of our greatest experts are some of our newest people, and that's participation management. And that's the only way, there's always situations where you have to be an authoritarian. In a dynamic situation, a leader steps up, starts making calls. But in management itself or leadership itself, we want our people involved. And I was explaining that to the Teamster, our union, our officers yesterday, that listen, if it comes to how we want to set our cars up, well, we're not going to go to a captain and do it. I spend less time in a car than most of our officers. Why wouldn't we go to our officers and say, how do you want our cars set up? So those are examples of exactly how we use our subordinates for management type decisions and using that participative or democratic form of management.
Okay. A question from Nicholas Rosauer. He asks, what should the role of law enforcement be in addressing our current mental health epidemic?
Well, we're on the front line of the mental health epidemic, and we need training. And everybody knows that. I hear Sheriff Thompson speak on this all the time. I'm in his corner. We have Tom Ikas come and speak to us quite a bit from Unity Point Mental Health. He does some of our mental health training. He has told me personally that he has been to the State House several times trying to get help. I was rated really low when it comes to mental health and what we do about it. And the less facilities we have, the less help we have, the more law enforcement's on the front line. So law enforcement has become the tool, once again, dealing with an epidemic, and it's mental health. And I made the comment, we had an incident a few years ago where one of our officers was hurt pretty bad early in the morning by somebody with mental illness. And I made the comment, and it was actually to Tom, that we have officers, they're either going to jail or they're going to hospitals because of this, because nobody wants to shoot an unarmed person with a mental illness. Nobody wants to, but and our tools end up being, as Sheriff Thompson has spoke out about, is jail. Because there are no beds. We need as a country to I believe anyways, this is kind of a political statement, to start putting mental health back to the forefront. We need to start, it's frustrating when you hear about, we don't facilitate anymore, all we want to do is medicate. We had a young lady, and I don't want to sell too many details because these are local people, but we had a young lady we were dealing with a lot up toward the hill. She lived in a private apartment. One night we went in, we were there probably, I'm going to say 5 nights a week. I was a second shift lieutenant at the time. And she went for a knife. She was upset with her mother for calling us. She went for a knife off the knife block. I intercepted her. We went down. I ended up cracking my elbow. Ended up in a sling for a while. I remember when we were taking her to the ambulance. We got her. Nobody was hurt except me. We got her to the ambulance, and I remember asking the mom, what, can't she live at home, or can't we get her in a facility? And the mom's response just broke my heart. Hey, we had her in a facility, but she's done there now. And if she lives at home, the medication is, and I don't remember what the number was, $30,000 or something crazy a year. But if she can live in her own apartment and show independent living, then the state will help her with her medication. Well, that's just heartbreaking. So here, mom was going over 3 times a day to make sure she wasn't drinking, make sure she was taking her medication, make sure, and it was just really tragic. That's what we see. We're on the front line. And that's every agency. I don't care what city you work in, we are on the front line. We're seeing, just more and more and more as we have less and less places to take these people to. It ends up going over into Sheriff Thompson's jail sometimes because we have no other alternative. So it's very frustrating.
Well, as a follow-up to that from Mr. Rosehauer, he asks, how much mental health crisis training should Cedar Falls police officers receive to effectively respond to mental health-related calls and incidents?
We do it every year. We have mental health training every year. It's probably not enough. I know Sheriff Thompson is, I haven't spoke to him about this, but I was told that he received a grant, going to be starting a CIT team, which is a crisis intervention team, actually trained to intervene with people with mental illnesses. And have a team that can come out now or be called out when we, so I think law enforcement's doing something. Right now, it's just the resources aren't there. I would rather see cops trained in mental health intervention than to continue doing what we're doing. Like I said, I don't want to see cops going to jail, and I don't want to see cops in hospitals. But we're on the front line. And it's frustrating, and it can be scary sometimes by the last second choices we have to make while intervening and with some of these people who really just need help.
Okay. Additional question: if you've or in the point where you've disagreed with a superior, how did you resolve this disagreement?
Well, anytime I disagree with a superior or a subordinate, I do it in private. It needs to be done in private, needs to be done. And with a superior, it's got to be done respectful. Director Olson, when he was Chief Olson, I disagreed with several things that, like I said in the beginning of the public safety program, I was adamantly against it. But I conducted myself professionally. We had private conversations. I wanted to know more about it. If you want me to be this, tell me about it. And he took the time to do so. Matter of fact, he invited me to go to Woodbury, Minnesota. He invited me to go to Kalamazoo. And I took those opportunities to go learn about what it is that they were asking us to do. I think that's the best way to do it. Don't just jump to conclusions. Go ask a little bit more about what they're asking you to do. I may disagree with your policy, but if you explain it to me, you may get me on board. But also, I'd like the opportunity to explain why I disagree with it. And that's why I think having that private conversation is always the best way. Besides that, it can be very uncomfortable if you jump on somebody or, in a public manner. Mm-hmm. It's always good to take that. So I like to do that in private and give the opportunity to have something explained to me and then maybe decide a little bit better whether I continue to disagree or it's something I can get on board with.
Okay. Following up, another question from TJ Frine was, how do you see this police chief role differently than it's carried out in other cities, since you'll be working for a public safety director and not a city manager or mayor?
Right. So our structure is a little different. So we have a public safety director that myself or whoever the police chief will be and the fire chief are responsive to. But I think you're still head. I will still be, if I was chosen for this job, still be the head of the police side. And like I said, a good leader chooses people around them that maybe always don't just agree with them. The worst thing we can do is have a yes person work for us because we're not always right. And if we have people working for us that are afraid to challenge us, we find ourselves going down the wrong path a lot of the times. So I hope that as the police chief, if there's something I disagree with, I will have the ability to challenge that in the manner we just talked about, in a private manner, in a manner that hopefully Director Olson and I can come to an agreement in some way if it's something I disagree with. I think you have to manage that way. My responsibility will be to the wellness of my officers. And wellness doesn't always mean their physical wellness, but do they have the right equipment? Are they getting the right care? Are they working the right amount of hours? All the things that we have to look to, and I think that's the chief of police's responsibility, no matter where he or she works, no matter what structure that is. Ours is a little different because we have that intermediate or that medium person before we get to use or to the city manager, where where a lot of cities they're directly responsive to the city manager or the mayor, him or herself. So we do have that different, maybe almost like an assistant chief position, as we call it, the assistant public director position. But I look at it this way: we've got a chief of fire, we'll have a chief of police, and those two entities or those two divisions should be led by those two people and directed by that public safety director. And that triangle should be able to make decisions. And when it comes to decisions on personnel, wellness, and equipment on the fire side, that should be made by Chief Bostwick. When it comes to stuff being chose by the police side, wellness, equipment, that information should come directly from the chief of police. He or she's the one that's going to have that knowledge, the hands-on, and have direct communication with those officers to have that knowledge of what's needed. So it's just a little bit different structure, but that's how I presume it will go.
All right, thank you. So the last question I have here on the sheet is from Kelly Stern. To whom is the police chief most accountable and why?
The police chief is accountable mostly to two groups. Number one, no matter if you're a police chief or a police officer, you're accountable to the citizens you work for. Police chiefs, and this goes into what I said earlier about police chiefs, and I've been told this by Dr. Tony Batts. I've been told this by every executive leader I've ever had training from. They should never be politically active. Police chiefs should always be politically aware, right? Politically awake of the atmosphere around them, have contingency plans in place to make changes that come from that political body as easy and as smooth and as effective as it can be for the public. Because that's who we work for. No matter if you're a police officer or a police chief, it is the public that we serve. We are public servants. I'm a professor at UNI, and when I teach at UNI, an adjunct teacher at UNI, and when I teach, I'm fortunate. I'm a police officer that gets to teach wannabe police officers, so I can tell all these crazy stories, and I'm a hero to them. But I'm fortunate. One of the first things I ask them at the beginning of a class is, "Why do you want to be a police officer?" And I'm telling you, to a man or woman, they all say the same thing: "I want to help people." It's never, "Oh, I want a pretty badge," or "Oh, I want to drive fast," or "Oh," it's always, "I want to help people." And I love that because that's who we want serving as policemen and women on our streets. And it's true because really, who do they work for? Yeah, they work for a city or a municipality or a county or a state, but really they work for the public. So the people we serve is who we work for. And then a chief of police also works for his or her subordinates. The number one job, I think, of a leader is to prepare those under them to take over. We should constantly be teaching and granting authority and responsibility to those we feel one day will take our position, because that's one of our biggest responsibilities. And then, as I said earlier, the wellness of our officers is one of our biggest responsibilities. Do they have the right equipment? Do they have the ability to seek employment assistance programs that we have? Are they aware of these programs? Do they have the right, are their vests being rotated out when they're expired? All these things that cops worry about all the time. What's their hours? Are they working too many hours? We've had issues in that with signups where we had officers simply working too many weekends in a row. And I remember some of the comments on social media where it was, and we were using Blackhawk County deputies as signups simply because it got to a point where my people that work night shift, they work the weekends, but when they finally get a weekend off, their wife and kids or their husband and kids deserve their time. And it's not fair to ask them to sign up on their weekends off. And it was getting to a point where we simply weren't getting enough people to help work, some of the bar districts we have to use our signups. And some of the comments were, we need help from other people. No, what that is our concern for our people, looking out for their wellness, that they're working too many hours. It's very stressful to be out on foot, in these crowded bars, in these, walking, checking IDs, doing the things that these people do, especially when we know at times there's been armed subjects in those areas, which is why we have those officers there. So that is who we work for. We work for our citizens, but we also, chiefs of police, need to work for our subordinates. and make sure that we're doing everything for them that we can. Of course, in the management lineup, I will work directly under a public safety director. That's true. But a chief of police's job, his or her job really is the wellness of their officers and to make sure that we're serving our public the way we're supposed to.
Okay, thank you. We have a few extra minutes, so I get to ask you a bonus question.
You bet.
What has been either your favorite or most rewarding experience in law enforcement so far?
Oh, gosh, I got two of them. So when I was in the city of Waverly, I used to consider myself Batman, and I was really elaborate about it. So our shirts have a zipper; they don't have buttons. And under mine, I went ahead and made the old Batman symbol on my vest with the yellow and the black bat. And I was the youngest officer there at the time, so I was always selected to go read to the kindergartners, which I loved. I always tell everybody I have 1,000 kids, I have 5 kids, but so I loved it anyways. And one time when I was there, I had a keychain. I had a Batman keychain. I used to hang on my car keys for work. And the one kid goes, "Hey, he's got a Batman keychain." And I looked around, and I think this teacher didn't know what I was going to do. And I'm like, "Really? I'm going to show you guys something, but you can't ever tell anybody." And I opened that shirt up and pulled that up, and the eyes were, "It's really him. It's really Batman." One of the best moments of my life was when these kids actually thought I was Batman. Really, I will never forget that. And that was probably in my second year in law enforcement, back in probably 1998. So, and then with the city of Cedar Falls, I was an investigator from 2009 through 2012. And I worked in some incredible cases, and one of my proudest cases was the bank robberies that were happening all over the Cedar Valley. And I came in after several of those had already happened. My captain at the time ended up putting me in charge of that, and my lieutenant and I ended up working with the FBI, Cedar Rapids, Waterloo PD, Iowa City PD, several PDs, and we built a task force where we would meet every month down at the Cedar Rapids FBI office working that. The night Jay Harkless was caught, my lieutenant and I were called to actually come down there and do the interviewing. And what an honor that was to have these agencies looking to our agency to do the interviewing, and myself and a couple other, an Iowa City officer and an FBI agent actually interviewed him for numerous hours on 2 different occasions to get those bank robberies solved that were happening all over eastern Iowa. Just a real proud moment that I love to share. Even when I'm teaching class, I use that. We talk quite a bit about that. But it's a moment where I really am proud of my law enforcement career. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time and coming in today and sharing these experiences with the residents of Cedar Falls. Appreciate it.
I appreciate the opportunity.
This has been one of 3 conversations with the Cedar Falls Police Chief finalists. I invite you to watch the other 2 videos and send your thoughts to me at rob.green@cedarfalls.com. Thanks for doing the work to be informed and engaged residents.